Welcome to The Fully Lived Life, a podcast for those who are longing to pursue the full life and want to break free from anything that holds them back. Listen in as two friends, a psychologist, Dr. Mary, and a life coach, Gillian, talk about life, love, and purpose through the lens of faith, science, psychology, and life experiences.
Oh, hello, Miss Mary.
Hi, Gillian. So good to see you.
It's so good to see you, but I do, as lovely as technology is, I do like being in the same room with you.
I know.
Because I feel kind of like, stilted.
I hear you. Like we can't feel each other's energy in the same way.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
And with this on,
I know.
whatever.
But you look so like technically advanced. I'm just saying.
Speaking of technically advanced, I said stilted. That reminds me of Stilton cheese.
Oh.
Which reminds me, this is my mind going creative.
I love it.
Which reminds me of our trip to Mount Tremblant.
Yes.
When we went on our motorcycle trip, and the hotel next to our, there was a grocery store next to the hotel. And it was like an IGA.
Yes.
But it had the most amazing cheese section ever.
Yeah. I know.
Most like regular grocery stores don't have a great cheese section. You have to go to the boutique-y style ones.
Yeah.
But this one, like you could get your, ragu sauce on one aisle and get your fancy French and Quebec cheeses on the other side.
I know. And we were in the middle of nowhere too. I mean, because we were traveling on a budget. So it put us in a little bit of I was shocked. Like we're almost on the side of the highway and there's this IGA with all this fancy stuff.
Well, we were on the side of the highway. In fact, in order to get to the IGA, we had to walk along the soft shoulder of the highway.
And try to avoid getting hit.
Anyway.
The adventures we're on.
Now that I'm thinking of cheese, and last episode, I was Stella the lab rat. But today the tables are turned, my friend. And you need to think about Stilton cheese and all the lovely cheeses because you get to be the lab rat today, Lucy.
Yes, and I do need my cheese to motivate me to do this.
I know. We need something to motivate us.
I know.
So what we're talking about today is when we actually hit a wall. So it sounds like maybe we've arrived. We certainly haven't.
No.
And in Dr. Brené Brown's book, The Gifts of Imperfection, she writes this. If we want to live and love with our whole hearts, and if we want to engage with the world from a place of worthiness, we have to talk about the things that get in the way.
Yes.
Especially shame, fear, and vulnerability. And you've been very upfront about your journey with shame. I've been upfront about my fear of vulnerability. And sometimes it might sound to our listeners or our viewers that we've kind of arrived.
Yeah.
Well, no, we have not.
No.
So could you walk us through when we hit a wall? And I know recently you hit a wall. So could you walk us through that?
Yeah. It's part of what I was talking about when I was a couple episodes ago about the whole thing about transformation. And just because we know our junk doesn't stop it from actually showing up. And, here we are well into our mature years, and we've been doing so much growth and, really trying to dig into the things that are holding us back. And yet, again and again. So, I'm going to share something I'm still in the process of working it out because I don't have a full clarity about it, but I'm starting to see how much it's actually been holding me back. So,
but I'm going to stop you there because I love that.
Yeah.
I love that you're still in the middle. You're not through it because sometimes we wait until we're through something before we share it.
Yeah.
Because then we kind of know how it turns out. So I'm glad that you're in the middle of it because that gives a lot of freedom and grace to our listeners to go, oh, okay.
Yeah. As a 2 on the Enneagram, I've talked about this lots, about how much I struggle with shame. But shame has been so much a part of my life that I don't even recognize that it's there. So I've shared with the listeners and viewers that I've recently gone through a season of transition, physically moving out here to the county and switching in my professional life as well, letting my youngest child launch. And so I have been sensing for some time that the Lord has me on this new thing. And with that new thing comes a sense that there's a greater impact and influence that he has in store for me, which requires me being brave. But I've just been like almost paralyzed with not being able to move forward because I have been now recognizing that have been struggling with shame. But of course, I've been holding back on some big decisions that I have to make, investment of my time and energy and resources on whether I'm going to go down this road. Because I feel like the message the Lord has given me is something I need to share, but how am I to share it? What does that look like? So I was on the way, taking a long car drive, and I happened to just say, you know what, I'm going to listen to a podcast. I've been sort of earmarked. Christine Kane was doing this summer series, and then she started talking about lies. And identifying lies. Like I figured I've sorted out all the lies in my life already because I keep going back to this thing. So I was like, okay, Lord, as I'm listening to this, what are the lies that's holding me back? And like, boom, it hit me. I have this belief that I make bad decisions, that I have poor judgment. And that, that's part of the reason that paralyzes me from making big decisions. And I was sitting with it going like, whoa, where's this coming from? And I started to pray about it, and I started to kind of seek out what was the source of it. And the Lord brought to mind just the many, many times as a little kid growing up. My mom was a very wise and capable woman, but she also had a tendency to be critical in her desire to help me. So she would step in and say, no, that's the wrong way of doing it. You need to do it this way. Or if I make a decision, she'd be like, why are you deciding to do it that way? That makes no sense. And by her regularly stepping in, I began to question my own decision-making and my own judgment. And then I marry a 6 on the Enneagram. And Peter is a phenomenal problem solver. He's so logical. He's so good at thinking through decisions. So when I compare myself to him, I'm like, I can't do this. I'm not nearly as good as he is. And of course, in his desire to help me, he inadvertently triggers those old wounds because he'll say things like, well, have you thought about this thoroughly? And why would you do it that way? And he would say those things. And of course, back in I was able to at least recognize that when I'm reacting, I knew it wasn't just him. I mean, I was going through that whole blame thing, like, stop criticizing me, stop this, before I realized, wait, it's actually happening within me. So all of that just kind of came up to mind as to why I'm struggling. And the thing that's so interesting is that these decisions before me, Peter has said to me, I full out support whatever you decide. I know you're going to make a good decision. I'm here for you. Just go ahead and decide. He's already said that. And yet this inner voice, this inner critic is telling me I make poor decisions.
Yep.
So that just kind of made me realize how much shame has integrated into the way I think through things and how much it's holding me back.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
And so I ended up, as I was processing it, because it was triggering some core wounds for me, I felt pretty raw. And, I right away, I messaged you. I'm driving, but I'm dictating it, just so you know, I'm staying safe. And I'm telling you all that's going on with me. And just to have a safe person hear these raw thoughts that were coming out, and just the way you just loved me, encouraged me, and said you were going to pray for me, it settled my spirit. Because I was literally on the way to do a recording. And if I had gone there at that place of just feeling so dysregulated, who knows what would have happened.
Yeah. Well, you'd be totally, first of all, you wouldn't feel like you belonged as per our previous.
Yes.
and you would be going with kind of all the stuff going on in your mind and not really being able to show up as your full self and be your charming self, really.
Right. Yeah.
And it bugs me. It bugs me when you say that you don't make good decisions, because I've always thought of you as a good decision maker.
Wow. Well, I mean, I have to kind of sit with that, Yeah. The other aspect of it is when I'm making decisions about my calling, it even more, I'm realizing, pulls me into this place of shame, because one of the other lies that I realize, I mean, I've shared this before. I've struggled with my voice, like physically, because of just realizing some lies that I've believed about my voice. Being Asian, female, Christian has put me in this box of feeling like I couldn't speak up, and I need to be behind the scenes serving and all that. But I was actually, would have a physical manifestation happening when I would sometimes go to speak publicly. So I started to dig into that. And aside from the spiritual realm of why the enemy uses that to kind of get in, I realized that I also have had experiences where my voice was questioned. Early on in my career, I just finished school. I was all eager. I was just really eager to get started. And I remember hearing a woman, when I entered the first corporate organization I was working for, she called my voice shrill. Yeah. And so that meant, when I'm enthusiastically sharing and I'm talking fast, and you know how I can get, I'm shrill. And then another thing I heard is another woman said that I'm full of myself. Oh. So it was like I'm being too proud, too boasting, whatever it is. So the message together came of shrillness, and I'm full of myself. And as an Enneagram 2, I struggle already with the recognition that pride is part of the thing I struggle with. Yep. So that made me even more. So as I'm moving forward to this bigger thing that the Lord is opening up for me, that fear of my pride, that fear of being full of myself, as well as that sense that maybe I'm shrill and, I don't make good decisions. All of that was just swirling around in my mind.
And can I touch on something else? I mean, you've already said it, but being an Asian female, also, like, how has that impacted how these other lies feed in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very patriarchal culture, and men or male babies are the preferred child to get. And so, and I'm of the generation that my mom, who was a very strong woman and much more like gifted in her leadership than my dad, but because she was female, she could never hold a position of clear leadership. More behind the scenes, at least from in the church world. And so I grew up with that. I was the youngest of 3 kids. My oldest sibling was a boy, and he was like the beloved child. I mean, all those things have affected why I struggle to have a voice.
So as you hit this wall and you sort of unpack what's going on behind it, first of all, I thank you for trusting me enough to unpack it with me. But sort of what was sort of the fallout? You went on and did this thing, and then you had to sit with these thoughts and emotions and all that had brought up. Where are you now at in terms of coming to these realizations, identifying the lies, identifying this kind of wall that you're hitting up against, and how do you anticipate kind of inching forward or moving forward or busting down the wall?
Yeah, I think what I've given myself permission to is to hold off on actually making big decisions right now. And it's not because I'm not capable of it, but I need to really wrestle through some of what's held me back. And I think I'm in a place of being able to offer myself self-compassion. And I can even feel, as I was retelling the story, those pockets of sadness.
Yeah.
As I share about my experiences when I was growing up, and even just how I've interpreted very well-meaning attempts by my husband to help. And so I'm just letting myself feel it, because as a 2, it's hard for me to feel my more negative emotions. Yeah. The other thing that was so amazing was that I shared all this with my husband, with Peter as well. And it wasn't an easy conversation, because I had to override my desire to blame him for it.
Yeah.
But also to hold back on my sadness around it. And so I was able to articulate in a way that he was able to hear me. It was beautiful. And I felt understood by him. He didn't quite know how to respond, but he loves me so deeply. And he was able to just say, I support you. And I will try my very best to be sensitive to the fact that this is a trigger for you. I mean, what more can I ask?
Yeah. And I mean, he's not going to do it perfectly, because part of his pattern of relating to you, to care for you, from his logical side of his brain, is to ask you questions that your inner critic then interprets as critical, right?
Exactly.
So the dance is kind of there, and it will take some maneuvering to create a new dance, right?
Yeah. But just for him saying that, I felt, again, really loved. And then, of course, Peter, being such a practical person, he then went on. So did I already talk about the fact that I've started dragon boating? Yeah, I've talked about this.
Yeah.
So he goes off and he buys me this beautiful paddle. And
I saw it. It's gorgeous. We need to put a picture up on our Instagram page.
I think you're right. Anyway, so that was him working out what he just told me, that he really wants to support me. So, you know, and for Peter, his love language is money. As in, when he's actually giving of that, he's really expressing how much he loves me. So
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. So so I'll just say that I'm definitely feeling like I'm in an unfinished place, but I feel good. I feel supported by the people who love me, and I feel like I'm having some really deep, honest conversations with the Lord. Yeah. And I'm giving myself permission, like I said, to slow things down, and it's okay.
Yeah, and it's not a quick fix, right? So it's not just like realize it, process it, and then move on. Right. It's a process in itself.
Right. And I have to regularly remind myself, like, am I hitting a wall because of these lies? Right? Mm-hmm. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. So sort of going back to sort of, if you were going to help somebody with a therapeutic tip, that they may be feeling that they've hit the wall, right, and they don't really know what it is, or there's some big inner critic going on in them that's telling them things, and it keeps repeating that loop. Right. How would you give them some therapeutic tips in order to move through it?
Right. So I would suggest that they tune in, but they also listen outwards. So when I'm talking about tuning in, it's creating a space to actually just sit on, what lies have I believed? And if you're a person of faith, to actually pray, like, Lord, what are the lies that I've believed? And if you've done this already, because I've done it so many times, and there's still new layers. If you've done it before, do it again and see what new things may emerge through that time of prayer. And just write down everything that comes to mind. And, it should be, if you can word it, as in, I'm no good, or it should just be in the first person. So don't personalize it for yourself and write it all down. And again, if you're a person of faith, then it's important that you pray through and just break those lies. If that's not the way you kind of process things, just to identify your lies and then to match it up with actually what is true.
Yeah.
And what is true for me and what is true what other people tell me. So that's where I go with the outside part of it. Go to the people that you trust and ask them, if you're a person of faith, to pray for you and to discern if there's anything that's coming up that's causing these walls. If that's not the way you, again, process things, and you go to people you trust, ask them, have you noticed any patterns in my life of things that are holding me back? And what could that look like?
Yeah.
And if they know you, chances are they'll have some thoughts for you. So if you incorporate that, that will be so helpful for you to then recognize that that could be the thing that's holding you back.
You know, you touched on a couple of things that I was going to share, but I think one of the gold things that I kind of want to share with people, we've nicknamed ourselves Stella and Lucy when we're sort of being the lab rat for all of you. But I think that there used to be a character on Saturday Night Live called Debbie Downer.
Oh, yes.
And I think that if we can take that inner critic voice and give it a name, like Debbie Downer, you know, whatever it is, call it, so that we can see it as kind of a source outside of ourselves that's not necessarily true.
Right.
It's a character that is affecting us rather than who we really are. So if we can have those negative thoughts and we go, wait a second, Debbie Downer.
Yes.
That's really not true. That's my inner critic speaking. And she's not always very smart.
Right.
I think that sometimes it can help us process and call out what's happening in our lives in terms of the negative thoughts, the lies, et cetera. The other thing is, can we try and reframe it? Like we've talked a lot about reframing in the past. So if you think, I don't make good decisions, that's your Debbie Downer inner critic full on.
Right.
But if you can think back to a time where you've actually made some really, really good decisions, if you can go, well, wait a second, that's not true, Debbie Downer, because in this instance, and this instance, I made really sound and wise decisions.
Yeah, and that to that point, like when I look back on my life, I have made good decisions. So where is that lie coming from?
That's right. So I think taking the inner critic, calling it out with a name, giving it a character.
Love it.
Make her as ugly as possible. Make him as ugly as possible. And then what is the reframing of that lie, negative thought that you have? What is it really? What's really the truth? Because we can then start to push forward and chip away at some of this stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. The last thing I want to add too is, you know, going back to Brené Brown's chapter, this one that she's talking about, the things that get in the way is the name of the chapter. She's talking a lot about shame, and she's talking about shame resiliency. And so you say calling it out. That's exactly it. The more we call it out, the more we talk about our shame, the more we talk about how shame controls us or impacts us, the more we actually develop our shame resiliency. So let's talk about it. Talk about it to yourself, to people you trust. And we're talking about it here. So just recognize that the more you kind of face it and talk about it and deal with it, the more you're likely to break free from it. So,
absolutely. Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing, Lucy. I know that you're still in the middle of it, and it's going to, we're going to walk through it, I'm sure, over time.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to seeing how you move through it and sharing that with our listeners and viewers, because I think that's how we really want to show up. We want to show up as our true selves. And sometimes it's not pretty, and sometimes it's undone, and sometimes it's not near perfection, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yes. I lied. That wasn't the last thing I want to say. I want to say one more last thing. This will be really my last thing.
Okay.
You know, I think our listeners and our viewers are, I bet you there's a lot of them that have this sense that God is calling them to more and bigger, to this next thing, and they've hit a wall. So I would love to be able to encourage our listeners and our viewers to pray for you. So if you can be brave and you can private message us on our Instagram account, on our various ways that you know how to reach us, that would be amazing, so that we can kind of walk with you and pray with you. I would love that.
Yeah,
right.
And I'm just walking one of my clients through a very brave thing that's huge for her, and it's been so beneficial for both of us to walk through it together. And I know that walking with somebody and having their support is critical. So please reach out to us. We really welcome it.
Yeah, amazing. All right, thanks for tuning in.
Well, thanks for sharing, Mary. As always, we love you. And we just thank you so much for using your voice and your wisdom and your life story to encourage us and to call us out to be braver and more ourselves. Because we do want to show up in this world with all that we have to give, so we can fulfill not only what's a longing in us, but also to meet the needs of others and call out in others what they need to do.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for that. Take care.
Take care, everyone. See you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Fully Lived Life podcast. We hope you found it encouraging and helpful. Be sure to follow or subscribe so that you never miss a new episode. And if you enjoyed our show, please help spread the word by sharing with your friends and family and posting on your social media. Thanks for listening, and tune in to our next episode.